I definitely approached entrepreneurship as humble as I could be. I wanted to talk to everybody. I wanted to learn from everybody. And I also, through that, made it an effort to have honest people around.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems and learning and teaching, right? We were talking about teaching Miss Jess about the significance of D-Day because in a very naive assumption, I was like, oh, shit, everybody knows about D-Day. But, now that we've said that, I'm probably thinking, geez, there's probably a whole bucket full of folks that don't know anything about D-Day.
Yeah, I mean, I know for her, she knows it. She knows like roughly what it is, but she doesn't know anything about the scale or just like how ridiculous of an operation it was.
Yeah. I'm guessing Matt Kemp, our guest, is joining us today. Matt, you probably know a thing or two about D-Day, don't you?
I do. We got a little bit of a history lesson throughout my my 6.5 years in the infantry. So yeah, I am aware.
Which and folks, just so you know, when you're watching this, we are recording this on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, and one of the things that I snickered about also on social media is the Marines doing the landing to as a demonstration today with the French Marines, the U.S. Marines and French Marines. But it made me think just now. Did you ever do any kind of landing as an infantry soldier other than jumping out of the back of a truck landing?
No. To be quite honest, I'm glad we got to stay away from water as much as possible, because with our kits for sure, we're going straight to the bottom if you get tumped.
Yes, folks, if you've never done the math on how much 100 pounds of lightweight gear weighs, it weighs 100 pounds. That's, if you didn't learn that in sixth grade science, you probably ought to recheck it, because 100 pounds of feathers weighs 100 pounds.
I was going to say, what weighs more, 100 pounds of heavy duty armor or 100 pounds of lightweight armor?
Yeah, lightweight definitely comes with a couple asterisks next to it.
Yeah, that just means we're carrying more of it. As I found, yes, my rucksack, no matter whether it was day one in the Army or day, whatever, year 10, 20, the 100-pound rucksack was just full of more stuff that was much lighter than it was 20 years ago, but that meant I could carry more. Right. So Matt, I always love to dive into this question first with our veteran guests, in that you kind of took a normal path after the Army, kind of went out and got a job and all that stuff. And then there was some point where you said, hey, wait a second, I can do this better than anybody else. And, oh, by the way, I don't have to answer to anybody else other than my wife.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, what was that catalyst that shifted you?
Well, there were a few. There were some economic shifts in the staffing and talent acquisition industry right around late 2022. There was a lot of layoffs going on. Clients were going in and out of budgets. And really, it came down to financial security for my family. Because if you get laid off in that industry, you got to go find a new job. You got to build a new pipeline. You have to do all of these things. And I came to the realization, if I did get laid off, if I did need to go find a new job, I would have to do all the same things that I would have to do to build up a new book of business if I just did it for myself. Except with me being my own boss, I wouldn't be giving away 95 to 85% of the money we bring into the house. So, with me now having my own business, at least in the staffing recruiting space, like I own my pipeline for the rest of my career as far as I want to work. There's nothing that's going to be able to take that away. There's no non-competes. There's no non-solicitations. Like I answer to my wife and the tax man, and that's it.
The interesting thing there, talking about the financial security and entrepreneurship, because I hear that with a lot of our guests. It's this like, I don't want to be reliant on anybody else. I want to be able to make my own money. Eat what you kill type of thing. How long did it take you to reach that financial security point? And could you talk us through a little bit of that period? Because you're going for the financial security, and I'm guessing you didn't feel very secure for, I would guess, at least 6 months there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very aware, like whenever I talk to other folks that are thinking about entrepreneurship, I'm very honest with them. Like I've been in the entrepreneurship game for right around 18 months, but the situation was optimal for me to jump in and start my own business because, my wife, she's a nurse, job security there. We have insurance coming from her job. So, there wasn't my feet weren't essentially to the fire to keep the lights on at the house. So that gave me the ability to be more strategic, in our ramp up time, to have great strategic partners to fill in gaps where I couldn't fill in. But yeah, I mean, I think it was about 6 months in that we started producing revenue. And I was like, oh, okay. So my first year, I didn't do $1 million in revenue. So that means I need to figure out how to do $1 million in revenue through a series of trials, tribulations, lessons learned, education, networking, mentorship, coaching, all the things. So, that's the long answer to your short question. It was right about once I started to generate some revenue for the company, I was like, okay, well, this is what I thought my phase 1, 2, and 3 were going to be drastically changed within, the first 6 months. So what I thought was going to be phase 4 moved up to phase 1. And, you just have to be versatile and be able to pivot as needed. But yeah, it was right about that 6 month mark that I was like, all right, we're a business now. We're generating some cash flow and we can all breathe a little easier now.
Let's talk about that setup plan, because I think that's a really interesting thing. It wasn't you quit on Friday and then Monday, said, "Oh, I'm starting a business." You put a plan together to make it a little bit smoother. I mean, truthfully, talk us through thinking about that and how do you line that up? Because I think that's a great lesson for folks to hear.
Well, I mean, you always hear. Different entrepreneurs talk about, I wasn't profitable until X amount of time, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, depending on what your funding situation looks like. So I wanted to go in, as lean as possible, because I didn't want to be upside down starting out. Again, I didn't want to have the pressures of entrepreneurship weighed down by lenders or just overarching debt right from the start. So I did plan my exit from my last company at a time that I would launch my official business 2 weeks after that. But 3 months before that came the planning phase. That was getting all the LLC paperwork in line. That's getting your website, your domains, all the operations stuff, bank accounts, cards, lines of credit, just all of the things that come along with starting a business up. So whenever I launched, I took 2 weeks off and then I did a soft launch for my company and started bringing on net new clients. So what I have found is that I'm a very impatient person whenever it comes to success. So I wanted to make sure that I had the path of least resistance and that all of my timelines were collapsed as much as the speed of business would allow them to. So again, I only knew what I knew at that time. As if somebody was to ask me now, what's my steps 1, 2, and 3 for my first month of entrepreneurship? Oh man, I can collapse that even more for you now, just from lessons learned in the first year. But yeah, I think it was trying to be strategic, trying to make things happen as quick as possible, but not putting the cart before the horse, where it's applicable.
I'd be really curious to hear your thoughts on the mindset side of things. You mentioned, you didn't have your feet to the fire. You had kind of your safety net there. Your wife's income as a nurse, job security there, insurance. You mentioned those kind of things. There's some, right, I think, conflict a little bit when we talk about mindset of the, like, do you want the safety net, or is there something about burning the boats and knowing it's like, I have to get this done, that helps you to push that next level? What's your perspective on that?
So I have kind of two schools of thought. I have the print right behind me of Hernan Cortez burning the boats before they attack. So I have a burn the boats mindset. I'm not a tourist in the entrepreneur space. Like, this is it. This is us going forward. But at the same time, I had to make a decision on what parameters I was going to put on myself. And with that, I knew that for my family's sake and for my mental sake, I didn't want to do the 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week to get things up and running, to grind on the sales funnel, to do all of these things, because, if you're not getting a chance to hang out with your kids in the morning and the evenings, then why are you even doing this? So I had put time on my calendar. It's only open in between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. And that's so in the mornings I can shake the boys out of bed, get them ready, get them to school. Then I have, X amount of time to work. If I need to pick the boys up from school, we do homework, we do all the family things. And then anything that spills over after that, I take care of after they're done. And, that may be going against what some of the hustle mindsets and, things like that. But the whole reason that I did this was for me to be in control of my own destiny. And if you can't even be in control of your calendar on a day-to-day basis, then, there's going to be a lot of things that pull you in too many different directions.
Yeah, that's a great example too of how to manage your time. I was writing something this morning, and the whole virtual assistant thing popped into my mind as I was writing. And as it does on most Thursdays when I start to do the click, paste, copy, paste sort of things that I do on Thursdays. But it also made me think about, well, how do you spend your time? And other than the calendar, would you share with us, what other time management things that you do so that it's enabled you? I mean, dude, 6 months generating revenue from a start, that's huge. 18 months and you're like, yeah, this is good stuff. I'm still going. Not what was that company's name I used to work for? I think they'll take me back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been an evolving process. So I'll take the example of working out. I tried to fit in 20 or 30 minutes wherever it worked. When there were some gaps in the calendar, and sometimes I wouldn't be able to work out for 3 or 4 days in a row. Sometimes I would just put outbound sales, block off 2 hours. As things start creeping up through the week, that block of time gets shorter and shorter. So I basically just had to be more deliberate with what I'm blocking off as it pertains to my priority list. So now working out, we do it between 6 and 7 before the kids get up. And then, non-negotiable 2 hours on Friday for XYZ to-do list stuff. And then, making sure that I have a weekly comm check with my wife. Hey, do we need to do anything, during the week, during the day? Like, let's make sure things are still getting done inside the house. So, I try to not live and die by the calendar, but being more disciplined with it has definitely allowed me to be more efficient with my time. But then also just understanding what the non-negotiables are. So as long as I have that pretty well implemented, I can shift around my priority list and make sure we're getting things done.
One of the things, I was on a coaching call yesterday and was working with somebody about this, of you define your schedule and you get all set and you get this routine that works great for you. And then you get phone calls and you get people showing up, you get all that kind of stuff. Could you talk a little bit, Matt, about how you kind of play defense around that schedule?
So I'm going through that exercise right now with essentially my calendar. So
Yeah.
I have two businesses. I have the corporate staffing and recruiting. That has a much different sales funnel than my veteran-owned small business consulting firm. So I have to be more protective of my time on the coaching side because there's a lot of screening calls. There's a lot of just kind of networking, face-to-face VC calls. So your time can get really consumed if you allow folks to be able to have that access. So I'm a little bit more protective of my calendar link in that space, just so I can be more targeted and end up working with folks that I would be a great fit for versus having my calendar to kind of hash all that out. Whereas on the on the corporate staffing side, that's a lot more outbound sales. That's a lot more generating meetings. That's already being very targeted there. So it's really just trying to figure out how it shakes out where your dollars per hour come in the most, and just being more deliberate and more strategic with where that money is being assigned time to.
Go ahead.
We were both looking down at the notes and both like, yeah, all right, that works. Jinx, where did you? So I want to get into the business building piece of this and that growth because you start off, it's you've built yourself a job. Mm-hmm. When do you, or maybe you're still in this transition period of moving out of a job that you've built for yourself into running a business?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I'm juggling two jobs internally. Matt Kemp, the account director that's trying to build up a book of business, and then Matt Kemp, founder, owner, manager of operations, that's putting strategic partnerships in place and trying to grow the enterprise level footprint. So I think it's just trying to again understand where your time is best spent, because some great advice that I got at Entrepreneur Boot Camp for Veterans put on by A&M. One of their
that's Texas A&M. Just
that is correct.
I was gonna say our listeners know that. Come on.
So went through a great block of instruction there, but one of the speakers was an exit planner, and the long and short of it is structure your business to exit in 5 or 10 years. And if you don't want to exit, then you have a well-structured business to take yourself out of daily operations, and then you can start spending your time and money investing in your next business. And that really spoke to me because at that time I was deep in the weeds. I mean, I'm still deep in the weeds, but I at least now am looking through the lens of what do I need to do to generate revenue for the company, for myself, but do I want to keep doing hard cold biz dev day in day out to generate revenue? I mean, probably not. So what plans do I need to put in place to start stepping back from that? Is that strategic partners? Is that automation? Is it XYZ? So I find myself having to basically do a quick pulse on the business and say, am I working in the business or am I working on the business? So I'm kind of taking that same mentality as I launched the coaching business, because you can get real caught up trying to live at the top of the sales funnel and generate a lot of opportunity and trying to get into pitch meetings and things like that. So I'm just trying to be aware, trying to have enough self-agency to know, am I working in the business? Am I working on the business? They're both very important, but you need to allocate time to each of those, because if not, you're just going to end up being very siloed with where your footprint is.
I think an interesting thing there, and and that's a specific example of entrepreneurs, but I think it happens in other types of roles where you have kind of conflicting styles of work, different types of work like that. Could you talk a little bit about shifting gears, kind of from being in the business to working on the business?
It was a learning curve because my background before I started up my businesses was primarily in advertising, account management, sales, marketing, kind of in that vertical. So I was always very aware of the sales funnel and dealing with clients, dealing with customers. But whenever I look at it from an entrepreneur's point of view, like that's such a narrow frame of view whenever it comes to the entire business. And a good example is as I was getting the staffing operations in place, I had to learn about out of state workers' comp insurance. So whenever somebody would try to ask me about just the very basics of that, I look like somebody asked the dog a math question. I was just dead behind the eyes, had no idea what was going on. So I was like, all right, well, I now know that this is a huge gap for me that I need to get, one, very well up to speed, and two, get a strategic partner in place to make sure that is 100% taken care of from not only a fulfillment, but a legal and compliance point of view. So I think it's just looking at knowing what it's like to work in the business, because that's what I had done most of my career. And I'm very, very good at being an account director, Matt Kemp. But having to force myself into manager of operations, owner, founder, Matt Kemp, it's easy for me to push myself into that role. I just need to say, all right, I've been doing account director stuff, for the last 3 days. Like let's start looking at some opportunities outside of just the sales funnel, and let's start looking a little bit more broad.
I got to admit, I asked that in accidentally a little bit broader than I meant. But that was a great answer. And just drilling in a little deeper there of how do you, or what's your kind of method to like literally make that transition? Like you are working 3 hours in the business and then you've got to work on the business for the next 3 hours. Not having too much lost time in that transition in between as you're kind of trying to switch that mindset.
Well, I think it's because I execute in very, very different ways. So we'll talk about LinkedIn searches. Like if I'm looking for somebody that would be an ideal customer, I can block that off my calendar, and I'm just doing, I have a process for that. And then whenever I take a look at, my calendar for the last week, I'm like, all right, well, I've been in the weeds, as an account director for, X amount of time. So let's go ahead and make this switch. And then I just go and jump right back into where I left off on the other process. And like, all right, let's start thinking about strategic partnerships. What are other companies doing as best practices? Let's look at the Inc. 5000, all the staffing firms on there, kind of what's their trajectory been the last 3 years? Is there anything that I could blueprint off of that? So it's like, I think I'm doing a lot less philosophical discovery, if you could call it. So everything that I do is very execution oriented. So I think it's just a little bit less of how do I make the shift or the transition from account director to owner, and it's more so just being aware of where my time's gone. So it's even the same way with juggling the two businesses. I'm trying to launch a veteran-owned small business consulting firm while I'm in 18 months into this corporate staffing firm. That's even more of a time hack issue because it's two wildly different businesses. But the kind of the achievements and milestones that I've reached with the staffing business made me aware of the product market fit and the need for me to kind of share that roadmap with other veteran small businesses. So it's basically just me being on a continuous road, pivoting along the way, and I try to be 50% proactive, 50% reactive, because as we all know, plans go to shit pretty quickly. So just being able to have the skill set to deal with it, assess, make another plan, and then move from there. that's been an advantage for me for the past year and a half.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure that came. The root of that came from your time in the infantry and the, hey guys, we got to put together the plan, we got to rehearse, got to do a train model, da 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 da, and then as soon as you cross the LD, it's like throw that out the window, right? So the other thing I find interesting is that you are, unlike many people, and a lot of them we've had on the show, you're also very open to saying, hey, I don't understand this. Who could I talk to that could help me with this? Who could I bring in my circle, my inner circle, and partner with, or get advice from, or whatever, not price, whatever methodology that is. But it all starts from that, hey, I'm not the expert here. And I know that, yeah, if I go long enough, I'll figure it out. However, I don't want to wait that long. Or I don't, and even so, it's not just waiting that long. It's I've got other things I need to do. Where did that decision process or openness come from?
I think that's a personal trait that bled into my leadership and operating style. So just me as a person, fairly confident. I don't really, I don't let the performance of others dictate my happiness. I just, I try to control what I can, and if I can't, it's not worth worrying over. So, kind of from a business operations standpoint, I don't feel like I have anything to prove. So I feel like I had the self-agency enough to know that I don't know hardly anything. So it's very easy for me to approach someone either in my space, in a parallel space, not in a completely different industry, and basically say, this is everything that I'm doing. I would appreciate your perspective on it. Because I definitely approached entrepreneurship as humble as I could be. I wanted to talk to everybody. I wanted to learn from everybody. And I also, through that, made it an effort to have honest people around. And by that, I don't mean, be worried about folks stealing money out of your wallet, but you can't have only cheerleaders on your bench saying everything you're doing is great. You need to have folks that will, put a hand on your chest and say, you need to reassess this, or I don't think this is a good idea. I am open to learning as much as I can, because again, it goes back to me being an impatient, just an impatient entrepreneur, that it's like, look, if somebody can tell me the best way to do X, Y, and Z, cool, let's do it. I will give you all the praise. I'll give you all the things. I'll be a referral partner, whatever you need. Like, let's educate me so I can, continue with this path of least resistance.
Talking about getting the right people around yourself, surrounding yourself with those honest people, made me think to a podcast I was listening to the other day, where they were one of the questions they were asked was, what are the values you look for in a friend? And I thought it was a really interesting thing, because one of their answers was, well, it's really hard because you don't know you really don't know somebody to their core. You don't know their real values until you've been around them for a larger amount of time. I've always felt there's kind of a similar issue when it comes to hiring folks and, building that team around you, which is like, you can bring someone on, it can all seem great. And then 6 months down the road, you're like, oh my gosh, wait, you did what? This guy might not be a very good person. Like, all those kind of things might start to come up down the road. Could you talk a little bit about how you maybe work to prevent some of that, or, identify those things earlier?
I think you just have to be in tune with what your personal and professional goals are. So I have milestones that I have for both companies. And whenever it comes to either strategic partners or just folks within the circle or personal friends or coaches or anybody within your universe, I think you should always be assessing what your peer group is. But I also think that you define what your peer group is. You can't loop me in with a whole bunch of other veteran entrepreneurs, because we've all probably had vastly different character arcs, different experiences in the military. different plans for their business. So if somebody says, "Oh, you're within this peer group," my initial reaction would be, "No, I'm not." Because I get to decide what my peer group is. I get to decide what my circle is. I get to decide what folks get brought into the fold with the business. And those are all going to be aligned with what my professional goals are. Because my milestones that I want to hit in the next 5 years, they're everybody that I've brought into my universe with both the staffing company and the veteran coaching business. Like all of those people are in this universe to help me reach those goals. Now, on a personal level, there's a lot of similarity. There's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram because I want to surround myself with folks that are driven. Not necessarily, they don't have to be entrepreneurs, but we're all like-minded individuals. So there is that overlap in between professional mindset and goals, along with your personal. So, but to answer your question, how do you reassess every 6 months, or what's the fix against that? I think you should be reassessing every 6 months because people change on things change on both sides of the fence. They from a personal standpoint, from a professional goal standpoint, and then just the world that we live in. A lot can change here, in the next year, and that could completely change with that could adjust your company's capabilities. That could impact the capabilities that you have folks working either in your company or under your umbrella. So, yeah, I mean, I think you need to reassess every 6 months.
I'm laughing, and probably the main reason I'm laughing is because you're not a Marine. But I could see my Marine brothers in that process with the score sheet in there up on the whiteboard right over here. And it's like, oh, Matt, let's see, he did this. I'm doing my 6-month assessment of Matt, right? So,
Right.
Yes. Oh, no. Oh, well, shit. I don't know about Matt anymore. But you know what? All joking aside, there's a lot of truth to that, too, in some form or fashion. Marshall Goldsmith, one of the great business coaches of our time. I think if I remember right, it's the title of his book, "What Got You Here Won't Get You There." And what he talks about is those 5 people that you spend the most time with, and are they holding you back? Are they keeping you steady? Or are they pulling you forward? And it's a really interesting thing to think about in life and in doing that.
Can I add a layer on that just kind of clicked to me because we talked about that before of it's like, well, what do you do with those people? And it's like, you don't want to cut people out entirely, especially if it's like a friend or family you're really close with. It's like, you don't want to just throw people to the side because they don't fit into that type 5 group right there. But it's almost like, you talk about the scoreboard there, Dad, that made me click of like, you almost need like relegation. Like you have your top 5, then you got like 5, 5, 5, you keep it down. And it's like, look, like this is the 5 that's driving me to get to where I want to go. This next 5, they're pretty good, but it's like, oh, they don't have that drive like I do. And then it keeps going down and down like that. That might be a better way to look at it. A little bit of relegation.
I like the relegation metaphor.
Well, it's also like when you look at, we'll just use my circle. There's, some veterans, there's some entrepreneurs, there's some, just high power, high functioning folks that I keep close to me. So someone new to that group will look around and say like, oh, wow, if I could choose my peers, like I would love to be, in this peer set. But it kind of aligns with that. You are only as good as the five or 6 people around you. But going back to what I said, like you get to choose your peer group. So if you want to elevate, whether it be professionally or personally, you can make that decision. And even whenever it comes to business, if you want to get to a certain milestone, whether it be revenue or status or whatever the case is, put a plan in place. Because I don't necessarily have, I don't look at other staffing firms in my industry and think, oh, I want to be their peer. I need to get to their level, just because I'm vastly different. We're the OSB. We have a different ops plan. We have a different strategic partnership plan. Like we're not in the same world. We're in the same industry, but like we're operating completely differently. So I just think that you need to put in a plan to be where you want to be, whether it's professionally or privately.
Yeah. I can tell you, folks, you will not be happy unless you're living intentionally. And in order to live intentionally, you got to know where I'm going. What's my plan? I want to shift gears and a little bit because I've got a couple of friends that they're doing the job search, and then the other thing that that I do as part of my mine and tribe and purpose give back to the veteran tribe is helping guys with that transition. I hear, and I've been out of this market space for a long time, but I hear nothing has changed since the last time I was in the market space of send the resume in to the job posting and crickets. You never even know if it made it through the spam filter or if you hit the right submit button or whatever. What's that market space with all the talk of AI and all in your industry, your expertise in that industry? What's shaping and truthfully, what can my two friends who are in the job search realm right now do differently that would help them find that role they're looking for?
Well, so there's two pieces to that. So first, we'll touch on best practices. So you have to take like a multi-pronged approach to job searching, especially in this market. You can't just cruise through, apply to the job on LinkedIn or do the easy apply. That's one piece of it. But what I tell folks is if you're in the job market, whether willingly or unwillingly, you need to, one, set up email alerts for all the jobs within your parameters, within your radius of your home, or if it's remote. Set up job alerts on Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn, because you're going to get those fed to your inbox. It's going to give you a good assessment of what the job market looks like for those roles that you're looking for. Second to that, you're going to have to network. You're going to, whether it be through LinkedIn, whether it be through Facebook groups with like on the veteran piece, there's tons of Facebook groups for veterans regionally. You can get active with your VFW or a number of other organizations that kind of serve that exact purpose. But you're gonna have to go out, shake some hands, have some beers, have some coffees. Like you're gonna have to put that effort in. And then on top of that, like, you have to understand that it's a war of attrition. Like you're gonna have to stay motivated. You're gonna have to just keep at it. But the more interviews you do, the better you're going to refine those skills. Because especially folks that haven't been in the job market in 5 or 10 years, the question of tell me a little bit about yourself, that just something that simple could that could throw a wrench in your gears at the very start of the interview. So once you get refined to telling your story, figuring out what your value prop is, then that's going to be able to, you're going to be able to communicate that to potential employers. So just going in cold, sending out a few resumes like that, that's not going to do it. You gotta treat yourself like a business. You're going to have to do some sales ops. You have to go in there and network. You're going to have to find out who's this hiring manager that has 3 jobs open that I want to work at. Let me go see if I could buy him a coffee, or if he'll spend 15 minutes with the veteran just to give me some perspective on my job search, my resume. Here's my value prop. Like you're going to have to be very proactive, especially in this day and age. And on the AI piece, I have a pretty simple way of looking at it. You need to assess, like, AI is coming whether you like it or not. So what I tell folks is, do you work at the abacus factory? Do you work at the calculator factory? Or are you the accountant that's deciding to switch from abacus to calculator? Because if you do an assessment and you realize, oh shit, I work at the abacus factory, you're going to have to find a new job. You're going to have to, get very skilled in something else, because there's no way that you're going to stop the abacus from going away. You either need to go try and work at the calculator factory, or if you already work there, make sure you get very proficient and you spread out your scope of knowledge so it's very hard to get rid of you. Mm-hmm. Or you're just switching up your tools because the market is going to make you have to use the calculator. Your clients, your customers, they're going to have different expectations, and it doesn't matter what industry you're in. I know there's a lot of folks that look at it in the creative space and they're thinking, shoot, somebody can just type in some words and create a logo. Well, yes, they could, but you're going to have to own that skill set on behalf of your clients. And yes, they're going to expect you to do a whole lot more in a shorter period of time, similar to the accountant that now doesn't have to throw a bunch of beads around whenever he's doing taxes, like he's from the 1800s. But you just need to do that assessment. A good example is in the recruiting space. There's all types of ads for, AI recruiters, or have this AI bot screen your folks. Man, if I was a job searching and I got an interview and it's like, oh, hello, this is Matt Kemp's AI bot, well, I just close my computer and we're done for the day. So I think in that aspect, I look at it from what AI tools are going to make me be more efficient, my company more efficient in the staffing and recruiting space. But again, I'm looking at it from the point of view as the accountant just switching from abacus to calculator. Because if you're going to get phased out, figure out a new plan, definitely lean into new training, new skill sets, and figure out what's going on instead of just sitting there, waiting for your job to go away. So that's my 2 cents. But then again, I'm just some infantry guy that owns a staffing firm.
And make sure you future cast those skill sets as well. I had this joke about the friend of mine the other day of talking about, and actually y'all would know more about this than me because I was young at the time, so I wasn't very involved in hearing news and politics. But the coal miners, just learn to code. It's like, could you imagine being the coal miner that learned to code and then AI came out and you're like, oh crap, are you kidding me? I gotta switch again. You gotta future cast it a little bit, right?
Exactly.
The interesting thing, you said about the person looking for the job to view themselves as a business, to kind of stay in that vein there, looking at the jobs that you're looking to get as the market, right? The market is very mature. That kind of the storytelling that you're talking about, there's not, I wouldn't say it's like completely proliferated, but we have reached a point where it's like certain things like that, like having a resume that looks really nice, not just, nice and clean, but like has some nice font with it, all that kind of stuff. Like things keep going and going and going. What are your thoughts on what people can do to differentiate as that market just keeps maturing like that? If everyone's telling these great stories about themselves, how do you stand out among all the stories?
You need to do A+ work. You need to present yourself as an A+ person, and there's no way around it. That reminds me of a story whenever my first job out of college as an intern at an ad agency here in Austin, they asked me to put together some spreadsheet, and I did what they asked of me, and I gave it to them, and everybody just kind of looked around, and they were just like, so did you think that you were going to do like C and B level work here, or did you think you were going to do A+ work? And I was just like, I already knew. I was just like, I looked at it. I was like, that looks like I spent 15 minutes on this thing. And all right, I'm going to go back. I'm going to make it more client facing. I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And I went back and I did that. And that really stuck with me. And that's the same way that I tell veterans that get out and they say, all right, how can I set myself aside? Or how can I set myself above? And I say, well, what if you made yourself the best candidate for the role, and then also you're a vet? And then so just being in that mindset of, all right, well, I already need to be the best, and then being a veteran is just going to be a very great add-on. That's the mindset you have to be in, because everybody else who is, mortgage payments are stacking up, they've been laid off for 6 months, like they're going to be going hard. They're going to have an ultra refined resume. They're going to be reaching out to every single hiring manager that is within their industry. They're going to be doing everything that it takes to get to that second round interview. And if you're not bringing A+ work, then you're not moving forward.
That's so true. And I was trying to remember who it was we were talking to, Camden. Uh, it was on the show, an earlier episode, not that long ago.
Mhm.
Talked about the job interview process and asked him in a sense of, hey, if I made you a partner today, would you change the way that you perform?
Yeah, I think that was just
And,
JB the other day.
oh, okay, yeah. Yeah.
But
I mean, but there's some truth to that. That's a really interesting way to think about it. What is your A plus effort?
Mhm.
And I think that there's a lot of that going on, and I think LinkedIn is a contributor to the easy apply.
Mhm.
Easy apply to this job because I've heard some stats over the last several months of the thousands of applications they get because that's what LinkedIn allows you to do,
Mhm.
apply.
Mhm.
But if you're going to stand out, that's the buy the lottery ticket to take care of your savings account sort of thing. I mean, can you
Right.
win?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
Good.
you're not going to win unless you buy a ticket. Can you still win? Is there still a probability of winning the lottery so that you don't have to work anymore and you have a nice retirement account? Okay, yeah. Can you get that job by hitting apply? Yeah. But you got to do the things that you were talking about doing. I, I'd love a little bit talk about Camden used the word future casting. I'd love a little bit of future casting in your industry as you look ahead, and particularly in preparing your business uh, for that future cast. What do you see coming with? Again, AI is the big, the big hashtag AI
Mhm.
for everything. But when you look ahead, how do you see things changing, developing?
Well, just at least in my point of view, I'm keeping an eye on AI, not so much for changing my business and my operations, but more so my clients, like my target market. So if the commercial Fortune 500 space completely removes whole verticals that I'm trying to target, that's going to be a big problem. So on the AI front, I'm keeping that kind of in my crosshairs. I also think that the political cycle is going to have a lot to do with both small and medium business spending as well as the larger companies. It's my opinion that everybody's just kind of holding their pocketbooks until they see if Team Red or Team Blue gets put in the White House, and then kind of the ripple effect in business outside of that. So I think just keeping your pulse to what's going on in your industry, but more importantly, what's going on in your clients, kind of in your client spheres, because with my veteran-owned small business status, I'm an approved vendor for a number of Fortune 500 companies. And then as I'm doing outreach to see if anybody needs any staffing or recruiting services, and they say, "Oh, our whole vertical of XYZ got laid off or hiring freeze because of AI or because reorg or things like that," like that's great intel for me to have, so then I can look at other companies with a similar offering, some similar products, similar industry, and say, okay, well, there's a tide shifting here. So how do I plan against that? How do I plan for that? So yeah, it's basically looking inward, looking outward, and then looking from your target customer's point of view and how their lives are going to change, and just doing the best you can.
Yeah, there's the bottom line. Back to A plus work again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Speaking of A plus work, that's talking about what I learned to get my A plus for the day. I'm gonna emphasize the multi pronged approach because it's I for anybody that's out there looking for a job, for my veterans, because we talk about 1,000 cups of coffee. And it's like, you got to get out there. I think I even wrote about it in Monday Moments not too long ago. Get out from behind your desk. Quit hiding behind your desk. I think is what I titled that newsletter. Uh, because if you're not out there meeting folks, pressing the flesh, you're just another piece of electron that may or may not make it through the filters. So it's no matter how impressive technology gets, any role that's worth anything, I think you got to meet the person in person. Any non-skilled thing, yeah, okay. If you're staying in non-skilled, we're dealing in numbers there. But anything that's highly skilled, high responsibility, yeah, you better get out there and press the flesh. Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
I got to add real quick because I heard this story. There's a news podcast I listen to, Hard Factor News, that they kind of highlight these random different news stories. And one of the ones they talked about last week was these. I think it was like 20 different jobs or so that were stolen by North Korea, that they like literally through those like generic application things had put in a bunch of applications, I guess. And they had these like 20 remote work jobs that they were like cashing checks for like a year over there. And some weird thing like that. So you think about just sitting the applications out. That's the level of like, we talk about like bots and social media and that kind of stuff. That's the level of like bots and spam you're dealing with if you're just sitting on applications rather than, gripping and grinning like you're saying. So just had to add that because I feel like that's such an exclamation point to what you were saying, Dad. But for what I learned, I'm going to keep it real simple. Matt, you said this of looks like I looked like I asked a dog a math question. And, that's going in the back pocket. I'm using that.
And Loogie has given you that look many times.
Yes, sir.
He's given that look to me a couple of times.
Whereas Gumbo
Matt,
just looks at you like
man?
he already knows the answer. Looking through you, right?
Yeah, that's what it is.
Oh, yeah.
How about you, man? What'd you learn?
I think it's just reinforcing what you said about living intentionally, because you gotta have some type of control. Whether it be in the entrepreneur space, whether it be in the personal space, but it ties into doing A+ work, but make things intentional. Whether it be your ops plan, whether it be your strategy, whether it be just your day to day, just make it intentional. That's my takeaway.
Awesome. Matt, how do folks find you, learn more about you, maybe even get some lessons from your staffing business, or more importantly, hire your staffing business?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Matthew Kemp. I'm manager of operations at Dialed In Staffing and the managing partner of the Red 7 Strategy Group. Both of those websites are dialedinstaffing.com and red7sg.com. But if anybody wants to reach out, I'm accessible on LinkedIn. That'd be the best channel right there.
Awesome. Great having you here today, man. We appreciate your time. Thanks for being with us.
I enjoyed it. Thank y'all.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Matt Kemp, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so that they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, the full archive of episodes available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again. We'll see you all next time.